What is your glory and joy? If somebody was to think about you, at the end of your life, what will be said of you? What will be your glory? In this letter to the Thessalonians, there is a sermon that we are going to hear concerning the day of the Lord. Paul writes to this church and tells them that there is a day that has been appointed, that every one of us will stand before Christ and will have to give an account. There is a day when we are going to be judged. So on that day, this is my question this morning to us. What is your glory? When you stand before Christ, what will be your glory and joy? Now, for you to be able to answer that question correctly, you have to answer another question on the other side. What are you living for? What are you living for? What are you living for? You know, your life at the end of everything being said and done will be measured by what you live for. Your life inevitably will be measured by what you lived for. This month our theme tells us to live well. Because if only you can live well now, then on that day when Christ comes, you will have something to glory in. You will have something to take joy in. So the question is this: how do you live well now? Let me share with you a few. We can only live well by being mindful of how we will finish in the end. We can only live well now by being mindful of how we will finish in the end. For Paul, as we go through this letter, you will discover that Paul has the end in sight. He sees the day of Christ coming. He sees that one day he'll have to stand before his master, and he'll have to talk to his master and tell him that in the year this, I was doing this. In the year, he would have to give an account of his entire life. You sitting here, the only way that in the end you can have glory as your portion and joy as a reality for you is if you start practicing living your life with the end in sight. Imagine on the day of your death, what will be said about you. Imagine if today was your last day on earth. What would people say about you? How would your eulogy be read? Would we have to doctor your eulogy to still make you look Christian? We can only live well now by being able to live looking forward and backwards at the same time. Let me explain that. We can only live well now by being able to see the end destination and then coming back to the beginning to do what will get you there. So for Paul, he knows where this church needs to go. He knows that one day they're going to stand before Christ. They know that they were not just being saved to be part of a movement. They were saved to spend eternity with Christ, to be part of his kingdom. He knows that. So Paul can see the destination of their salvation journey. So what does he do? He goes now back here to point of beginning to instruct on them the steps they need to take to arrive at that destination. I am afraid for many of us, we talk about being saved. We talk about following Christ. We talk about even going to heaven sometimes. But if somebody was to help us understand that the steps we are walking in right now, if somebody was to help us forecast where the steps we are making, the decisions we are making, the choices we are making today, where they would eventually lead us, many of us would discover that we would be far from heaven and far from God's sight. You see, your destination is determined by this step here, where you are right now. So that's why I'm suggesting that for you to live well, for you as a believer to live well, you need to know where you are going. Then now, once you know where you are going, you allow your compass to only focus there. And the steps you make sure you're making steps that will take you there. One time I came to church with, I didn't come with my motorbike. In fact, I used a brother's motorbike in that service. And I tried to demonstrate something I learned concerning riding motorcycles. You know, some of the motorcycles I ride have a speed of about 240 kilometers an hour. The engines are big and the weight they carry is small. That means at the slightest acceleration, 𝗙cie, at the slightest acceleration, somebody help the 𝗙cie please. At the slightest acceleration, that motorbike can peak from 0 to 100 within a few fractions of a second. So how do you maintain direction in a motorcycle that goes that fast? So somebody taught me and told me, where your eyes are looking at, where your eyes are focused, that is where the motorcycle goes. So I have learned that, and those who ride motorcycles can tell you, if you want to make that corner, you have to keep your eyes on where you eventually, not where you are right now, on where you want to go. And the bike will lean in that direction, and eventually you make a safe turn, even though you're in a very high speed. Your Christian walk, if you shift focus from your destination, and your destination is Christ, your destination is that day when He returns to be received among those who be received. If you move your focus from that and you start looking at money, you start looking at women, you start looking at properties, you start looking at promotions, you start looking at academics, if you focus on that, your whole being will be there. And on the day of Christ, you will miss Him. So Paul, in this letter, he's going to introduce us to the day of the Lord. He will help us to understand that wokovu sio story. There is a day that Christ will return and He will hold each and every one of us accountable. So I've found so many people who have left ministry and things they were doing for God. They say that, I want a peace. And when you listen to them, what they're saying, they want a peace, it is because 1, 2, 3 brothers did not agree with him. Somebody criticized him. They have not been given a chance. They have been kept on the line for long. They have been made uncomfortable. People of today want to serve God in the zone of comfort only. You think it's comfortable for me to be a pastor here? Every day there is a weight on my shoulder. Every moment there is something that is on me. But I can't say because I have so much weight on me that it is not God's will for me to be a pastor here. No, I glory in that burden because I am sharing in the sufferings of Christ. What is your glory and what is your joy? I need you today to answer for yourself. This letter will not allow us to relax without reminding us that indeed when it's serving God, you must have something you may be able to bring before Him on that day and say, Lord, I did this. This is what I did with the life you gave me. Paul, he was confident because in the now he was living purposefully, intentionally, and lastly, strategically. He was constantly planning. There's a verse there we read, how he intensely he longed. So what did he do? He sent somebody. He wasn't satisfied with himself until he knew the next step. He was always thinking about the next step. If you are one of those people who sit for things to happen so that they know how they will react, then you will miss out a lot on what God wants you to do in this life. You have to be purposeful. God has brought me to be doing this. God has raised me up to this level to be doing this. Okay, then you become intentional about it. You go ahead. Even before they ask for your service, you are there to offer it. If they don't give you a chance there, you are busy knocking elsewhere to find it. Come on. Once the chance is given, you are strategizing. Even on your waiting time, you're also strategizing that when that chance is given to me, I will start here, then here. If this does not work, I will head there. That does not mean you trust in yourself. No, it means you understand that God has already equipped you and He expects you to produce. I finish by asking again, what will be your glory and joy on the day of Christ? What will you be able to say to the Lord